What's the deal with the strange square shape on Mars? Let's go back to the late 1990s. At that time, we wanted more detailed information from the Mars Global Surveyor MMGSIS to help us pick the best spots for future landings. We needed to learn more about the planet's surface, how it changes with the seasons, and other details like that. In 1996-97, we sent a spacecraft called the Mars Global Surveyor to Mars. The MGS was designed to orbit Mars from pole to pole, which gave it a big advantage for taking pictures. As the spacecraft moved around the planet, Mars itself would rotate beneath it. This meant that every time the spacecraft completed an orbit, it could take photos of a new strip of the planet's surface. Over time, these strips could be combined to create a detailed, high-resolution map of Mars. This kind of mission is how we gather information about planets, moons, and asteroids before we send other missions to explore them. The Mars Global Surveyor sent back a huge amount of data, helping us learn a lot about Mars and plan for future visits. Every now and then, someone spots a feature on Mars that looks like a square or has sharp right angles. That's interesting, right? Enhanced images can make these edges look even sharper, making it seem like a complete square. These enhanced pictures can make you think it's something unusual, not just a natural formation. But let's focus on the original image. What could it really be? You don't see many right angles in nature, especially on a surface that's been hit by asteroids over time. Most natural ridges are curved or rounded, that's what's common. But Mars has clear signs that water once flowed there, and water can carve out ridges and cracks that can be either curved or straight. Also, Mars has about the same amount of land area as Earth. If you took all the land on Earth, it could cover the entire surface of Mars. So, if you had that much area to explore, what kinds of things might you find? It's a big place, and there's a lot to discover. Let's go back to 1976. One of the early Mars satellites took a photo of something that looked like a face. Specifically, a face similar to an ape's, with a nose, eye sockets, cheekbones, and an oval-shaped head. People got really excited and started saying, "Life on Mars. Oh my gosh." But here's the thing, humans are wired to see faces, even when there aren't any. This tendency is called pareidolia. It's why we see shapes in clouds or faces in random patterns. When more images of that same area were taken, the face disappeared. What looked like eye sockets and cheekbones in the first photo turned out to just be shadows and rock formations. Some people who really wanted to believe in life on Mars came up with creative explanations, like, the Martians knew we were looking and covered it up with dust. Sure, maybe that's what happened. If that's what you want to believe, go ahead. But the truth is, you'll almost always be wrong with ideas like that. Still, if you're right even once, but as a scientist, I can't afford to be wrong 99.99% of the time. I have to stick to the evidence. Let's keep going. On Mars, there's a crater that looks like a Valentine's Day heart. There's another one that looks like the classic yellow smiley face from the 1970s. You know, with the smile and two eyes. And then there's this one spot, where someone noticed a little structure that looks like a person, just sitting on a rock, chilling. Some people even said it looks a bit like Bigfoot. But how do we even know what Bigfoot looks like? There's that one blurry video from the 1960s, but if there were really a giant ape-like creature running around in the forests, you'd think we'd have better evidence by now, right? The comedian Mitch Hedberg, rest in peace, had a great joke about this. He said, "What if Bigfoot is actually fuzzy, so you can't get a clear picture of him?" Funny, right? But back to Mars. This sitting dude structure is actually just a few inches tall. It's probably just dust and rocks shaped by wind or erosion. It reminds me of the Old Man of the Mountain rock formation in New Hampshire. I saw it as a kid and thought it was awesome, but parts of it have since fallen off. The point is, humans are amazing at seeing patterns, even when they're not really there. We're wired to look for faces and shapes in random things. For example, if you scatter random dots on a page, someone will eventually say, "I see a face," or "I see a cliff." It's just how our brains work. So, while these Mars formations are fun to imagine, they're most likely just natural features shaped by chance and erosion. You're absolutely right. On Mars there are plenty of ridges, and if you have enough of them, eventually two will cross at a right angle. It's just statistics. But we don't pay attention to the ones at 45 degrees or other angles because 90 degrees feels special. It's the one we remember from geometry class. So when we see a right angle, it stands out, even though it's probably just a coincidence. Could it be an excavation site on Mars? Maybe. Or maybe it's just a natural formation. What's really fascinating to me is how quickly our minds jump to the idea of aliens or something extraordinary when we see something we can't easily explain. It's like our brains are wired to fill in the gaps with the most exciting explanation possible. As a scientist, I find this urge intriguing, but as a human, I think it's just part of who we are. Psychologists might say this urge to believe in the unexplained comes from our need to make sense of the world, even when we don't have all the answers. It's the cost of being human. We're curious, imaginative, and sometimes a little too eager to see patterns or meaning where there might not be any. But honestly, that's what makes life interesting. It fuels our creativity, inspires storytellers, and keeps us exploring. So while we might not always find aliens, the search itself is part of what makes us human. Absolutely. People are naturally drawn to explore unusual features like that square structure, and there's nothing wrong with being curious. If we get the chance to send another lander or rover to Mars, it could be worth checking out, especially if it fits into the broader goal of searching for evidence of life or understanding Mars geology. After all, exploring the unknown is what science is all about. But as always, it's important to focus on the original images and not get too caught up in enhanced versions that might exaggerate certain features. Mars is full of fascinating formations, and while some might look artificial, they're almost always the result of natural processes. Still, investigating geometric structures could be a fun side quest for a future mission, as long as it doesn't take away from other important scientific goals. As we continue to explore Mars, it's important to balance our sense of wonder with scientific rigor. Future missions could investigate these geometric structures if they align with broader goals, such as searching for signs of past life or understanding the planet's geology. But for now, these features remind us of the beauty and mystery of the universe, a universe that constantly challenges us to question, explore, and dream. So, keep being curious, keep asking questions, and as always, keep looking up. There's so much out there to discover.